And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Talkin' Bible. And today we're talking about Sabbath, something we've visited a few times on this podcast over the years. Been quite a few conversations around the Sabbath. So thanks, Adrian. We're going to talk about what does it really mean to have a Sabbath? What is Jesus really getting at? What is he rebuking? Their misunderstanding of the Sabbath. So where do you want to go today?
I was just thinking when you said that it'd be interesting to get all those studies together and blame all to see all the different thoughts.
In the context of the way we'd set up this year's Red Letter Jesus Bible reading plan, one of the main themes on Thursday is actually Sabbath. You'll see numbers of the Thursday ones because as I put the plan together in about September last year, I was astounded at how many teachings there are about Sabbath.
Okay,
it's actually once you know, you go, oh, yeah, of course. But it's amazing how often this topic came up in Jesus' ministry. What was appropriate, what wasn't appropriate, multiple times. Should we heal, shouldn't we heal? Should we eat, shouldn't we eat? What do we do? Should we stop? Etc. And it goes on and on and on. How often it was the Sabbath.
Because I guess the religious people were very religious about the Sabbath.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and Sabbath had become something that they served.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah, it become very, very legalistic. A sign of you keep Sabbath, it's the most important thing in the world. Yeah, definitely.
Don't worry about God.
Yeah, no, it's not about God. In fact, if you want God, you have to religiously keep Sabbath.
Okay.
And even today, the Jews still have a very, very strict regime around what's appropriate and what's not when it comes to the Sabbath.
Yeah, and they can get exceptions from voting in Australia because it's on a Saturday.
Totally. You have honestly no idea about how many, literally the number of caveats that they put in place, the things that they bend and twist to enable them to live life and not break what they perceive to be the Sabbath. And that's the hypocrisy that Jesus goes after in most of these passages, and nearly all the time. Famously, I think this is probably the passage where he's going to say it. Yeah, the Son of Man, is this the one where he says the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath? Is it? No, it might not be this passage. This one he's talking about being the Son of Man, being Lord of the Sabbath. Yeah, but Jesus says, he says, you guys have got it wrong. The Sabbath serves you. You don't serve the Sabbath. No. It's there for your goodness. It's there out of a gift of grace to God to give you rest, to help you enjoy life, to trust Him. That's what it's all about.
But as you're saying, it's humanity to create rules, but then our human tendency is to work out ways to get around those rules without actually breaking them.
Yeah, and I think I've talked about this before, like the Sabbath and the Gentile elevator and the Sabbath elevator in Israel. You can go into an elevator on the Sabbath and it stops at every floor because they can get in the lift, but they can't touch any of the buttons because that's work. So it just goes one by one. But it's not uncommon to see a Jewish person get into a Gentile lift and just ask the Gentile to push the button for them, and up they go.
So that's okay.
But that's okay because they haven't actually physically pushed the button. I mean, you can see the hypocrisy in it, but this is what while I'm being harsh and sort of almost cynical about it, we all find ways to do this in all areas of life. It's a human nature thing to cut corners.
Do they have a longer than 24-hour Sabbath? Because some used to start in the evening.
Well, Sabbath is sundown to sundown.
Of course, at one stage, one group was sun up to sun up.
Is it? Okay, yeah. I think the traditional Sabbath, when I've been in Israel, Sabbath starts at sundown on Friday night and finishes at sundown on Saturday night.
Okay.
But that said, I mean, they don't open the shops until Sunday morning. So, yeah, if you want money out of an ATM, which I've learned the hard way, you got to go and get it before lunchtime on Friday. Pretty much get it at lunchtime on Friday. If you go after lunchtime, all the ATMs are empty because everyone's cashed up.
Okay, so they cash up before
then they close. They cash up before the Sabbath because they literally close down the ATMs.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So they consider getting money out to spend is work.
That's what. Yeah. So the ATMs are closed, and they don't open again until Sunday morning.
That is taking it to real extreme.
Yeah, which is really not that different. I went to breakfast the first Sabbath in Galilee, very first time I was there, and Jill and I went and realised the coffee machine wasn't working, and it was covered over, and I thought, I didn't even think about the fact it was Sabbath. It was just I just covered over, and worked out that there was there was all these complexities around all the rules to do with what you could eat on Sabbath. And the waitress just said to me, she just laughed and she said, everything's complicated on Shabbat in Israel. That was her answer. Everything's complicated. So there's just all these complexities and rules around it. And that's what Jesus is getting at. He's not dismissing Sabbath, but he's just trying to say there's principles behind the Sabbath which we need to take on board. And to be honest, if I'm perfectly honest, I think we Westerners could benefit from taking on some of those principles, rest and a day off and all those sorts of things, yes.
My dad originally worked a 44-hour week, and so from Saturday lunchtime till Monday, everything was shut, basically.
Yep.
Except your little cafes.
Yep, that's right. And so there's definitely some benefit in some of those things, as long as we don't become overly religious about it. Anyway, let's talk about the story.
I was looking at, actually, Matthew, Mark and Luke are the references. Matthew 12, 1-8, Mark 2, 23-28, Luke 6, 1-5. They're basically the same thing.
Pretty much the same thing, aren't
So
they?
I'll just read some of Matthew first. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat. But when the Pharisees saw him, they said, "Look, your disciples do what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." Probably increased the pitch of that a bit.
Yeah, so their accusation against him was that technically what they were doing was harvesting, which was work.
Yeah. But that was their interpretation of the law, not God's.
That was not God's.
Because you're allowed to take stuff as you went through a field.
Correct, exactly.
To eat for it.
Yep, that's right. But they had made it the letter of the law that was, well, you're picking grain, that's harvesting, which is a work. You do not harvest on the Sabbath.
Yeah. Because they also had rules for how far you could travel on the
Correct.
Sabbath.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, don't get me started on that one. You have to ask Shannon about that one, because there's some Jews up at the conference centre, but there's certain rules around how they build string. Have you ever seen it? They can actually build string. I don't know all the details of it, but they build string line. And by extending the string line beyond the confines of the house, the string actually becomes another room.
Okay.
So you can actually stay within that string line. You can theoretically build this line of string and you can go all that distance because it stays within the room of the house. There's all kinds of crazy rules about it.
Yeah, one of them I read, and I may have written down here, about how they'd put food into a certain place and say that was their house, and so they could go to there to eat it.
Precisely.
But apparently they had this how far you can walk, but apparently as well that only applied outside the city.
Outside the city, correct.
So
inside the city was okay.
So within the city, that at least that allowed you to go to church.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Because you got
well, when I've been driving around Israel, you see them. They don't. The Orthodox Jews aren't driving their cars, so on Shabbat they're all walking, and they're usually walking to the local synagogue on Friday night or back there on Saturday, and they're walking. Yeah, and especially not so much. It's a bit hard to tell in Jerusalem because it's inside the city, but you go into the countryside in Galilee, that's what they're doing. They don't drive the cars; they walk to synagogue.
But at least they can go to the synagogue. I remember within Catholicism you had to go to Mass on Sunday.
Yeah.
But back in the 50s, the rule was if it was more than a mile that you had to walk, it was okay. You didn't have to go any further than
right.
that.
Which is obviously a layover from this kind of thing. Yeah.
Which has changed once everyone's got cars.
Yes.
Because now it only takes a couple of minutes
to go there. So yeah, but that's come out of this whole concept of some of these laws that they had to obey.
Yeah. But he said, Jesus said, have you not read what David did when he became hungry? Him and his companions, they did something. They went to the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do. But only the priest could do it. So he's pointing out where David, who they almost worshipped probably.
They worshipped, yep, exactly.
Did something that was illegal within the terms of
Technically, quote unquote, broke the Mosaic law, yes.
Yeah. And so he's pointing out how, look, you're too rigid in that. There's, okay, the law says you can't do something, you're not allowed to do something, but there's excuses when you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You think, I mean, when we was having our second child, I was taking Mary to the hospital. She said, "Go faster."
Yes,
but the speed limit.
But there's a speed limit. So which one do you do in that situation? Exactly.
What your wife says.
Yeah, what your wife says. Yeah, go faster. Exactly right. Because you go, okay, there's nuance in that.
Yeah.
And there is with all the Mosaic law. You know, you've got to get to the underlying principle of what is. This is what I taught when I taught on law earlier this year or last year. You know, what is what's the code? What is the context? What is it? What am I observing about human behavior? What am I discerning about God? And how can I embody this law? So what does this tell me about my own sin? And what does this tell me about God's nature? And how can I then apply this law into this situation? And that's really important because if they did that, which is what Jesus is saying they're not doing, then yeah, they would go, well, it's okay to pick grain or whatever.
Do they cook on the Sabbath, or do they cook the day before?
No, there's all kinds of rules around what they can and can't cook and what's regarded as cooking. You can't put. I'm just guessing here which way around it is. I'm just thinking. For instance, you can't light a stove, but if the stove's already alight before Friday, you can leave it alight. So that's something, as long as you have it lit before sundown. And there's some rule around making coffee. And literally, this is how straining out a gnat, swallowing a camel is. You can either, I don't think you can put coffee into water because that's regarded as cooking, but you can pour water onto coffee because it's not regarded as cooking. Okay. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
To know all those rules and try to keep them. And
crazy. It's constrictive.
Yeah.
That's what religion does. It
Yeah.
binds us up, and yet we're supposed to live in a degree of freedom.
And it's got to deal with every small circumstance.
Totally. You end up with a volume. That's what the missionaries is like, a volume after volume after volume of interpretation of the law. How does it apply in every possible situation? Whereas God says there's going to come a time when he's going to write the law in our hearts. And we'll intuitively, by the Spirit, know what's right and wrong.
Because he says on the Sabbath, the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent. They're actually,
because they're working.
They're offering sacrifices,
That's
which
correct.
is their work. Or is that suddenly not work?
Suddenly it's not work. That's right.
And another place, Jesus says, your doggy or your kid falls in the well, you're going to leave him there all the whole Sabbath, or you're going to pull him out?
You pull them out, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, a thing that is wrong, but there are circumstances where you've got to do the wrong thing because in the end that's really the proper thing to do.
Yeah.
And in these trivial laws, I mean, you can't murder and say that's right.
No, there are some absolutes.
Yeah, they're absolutes. But
generally speaking, we need to get beyond the letter of the law into what Paul calls the spirit of the law. What is the underlying way that this law is showing me how to live like Christ would live? And that might involve setting a woman free on the Sabbath from a disease that she's had for 18 years. Don't come back tomorrow, which is what they're saying. Come back tomorrow and get healed. I mean, it's just hypocritical. Jesus is going, no, you, like you just said, you rescue your donkey that falls in a pit. Why wouldn't you want to heal this woman on the Sabbath? So that's the underlying law that Jesus is trying to get at here.
Yeah, because he gets that, but he says, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.
Yes.
This is my day, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Which would have been, I mean, that's tantamount to that. It's tantamount to Jesus making a claim of divinity here. This is my day. Yep. They are worshipping the Sabbath, thinking that by worshipping the Sabbath so emphatically, they are worshipping Yahweh. And he's going, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath.
Well, he just said, but I say to you, there's something greater than the temple is here.
Wow, that's a big claim. Yeah.
If you'd known what that means, and he said, I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the innocent.
Yep.
And again, we talked about mercy earlier.
Yep.
And the Good Samaritan type thing. The priests and that go past, and maybe that wasn't to get contaminated, so they could still do their temple thing.
Yep.
However, Jesus would have preferred they were compassionate.
Jesus would have preferred they were showing compassion to the man,
yeah,
like the Samaritan did. Yes, that's a really good example of what he's talking about.
Now, in their situation, because there's so many of them, they often got selected by lot. Yep. And they might go the whole year and not actually get to serve in the temple.
That's true.
Too.
And even then, Jesus would still say, the one I want you to do is show compassion to the hurting.
You get one shot in 50 years to do something and you've missed out because you're nice to someone.
Because you're not ceremonially clean, because you're nice to someone. But Jesus would rather that.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the point he's trying to make.
Yeah.
He is the Lord of the Sabbath. Amen. Got anything else there?
Yeah. I didn't quite work out where time-wise this fits, but Jesus needed to push the Pharisees at various stages to get them annoyed enough so that eventually that they would sacrifice him.
Well, I think time-wise here it's in a few different spots because Mark has it right at the beginning and Matthew has it, Matthew 12, Luke has it. Oh, so it's fair. I'd say in all of them it's reasonably early in his ministry is the way it's recorded there, although we can't chronologically timeline the Synoptic Gospels very well. So certainly not much before the...
Being who he was able to time these things well.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
How far to push, sir?
Yeah, how far to push them.
It's like, again, I think coaches training their blokes for sports and stuff like that. You can push them that little bit further to get them to get better type thing.
Yep. And Jesus was pushing them to get them to get angry with him, to kill him, basically. Yeah, exactly.
To what extent did he know it? It's a bit interesting.
Yeah, what he said he knew was going to happen.
Yeah, I'd fully understand what was going to happen.
Well, I think he knew at some point in his ministry. He knew before he started. He knew because he told the Jews in Luke's gospel. He told his disciples 3 times, "The Son of Man is going to Jerusalem. They will betray him, flog him, crucify, and kill him." So at least he knew early in his ministry that that's what they were doing. They didn't get it, but he did.
He did, and again. We've got to go to the dentist or something like that, and we get a bit apprehensive about it. But we're not having a 3-year wait to get crucified, are we?
No, that's right. Yeah, but he knew, and he was faithful through it all. Wow, amazing.
And he did it. He didn't have to do it. He could have justly not done it and just condemned us all to hell. But he said, no,
his tremendous love kept him there. Yep. Yeah, so Jesus wants us to take the Sabbath and use it in a way that benefits others. That's beneficial. Let it serve us, not the other way around.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. I mean, back in the old days, everything shut down for Saturday.
I'm young enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember Saturday afternoon, midday, the shop shut.
And people did stuff then, and then Sunday was sort of family church days, and there might be one game of football. Yep. And now there's half a dozen games of football, and you want to rush home and all those other things, which take us away from church. Yeah,
all those things. Yeah, it's society has changed dramatically in this last generation. Yeah.
And I guess in some ways, it weeds out commitment.
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, while we say that, imagine what it was like in pagan first century where there was no Sabbath.
Yeah.
They weren't, slaves didn't have a day off at all. There was none of that. So we the beneficiaries of Judeo-Christian teaching, the reason we have 2 days off traditionally, Saturday and Sunday, is because Jews and Christians basically give one, the Jews can have the Saturday and the Christians can have the Sunday. So that's where it comes from. So we benefit from that to some degree. But the church found a way to persevere during that time, even when they didn't have a day off.
Yeah.
Even when they weren't allowed to have Sabbath, it wasn't like God ignored them or God condemned them. A Christian slave had no choice. It was either that or die. So they must have had to not have a Sabbath, and yet God still honoured their faithfulness.
They somehow worked out how to do whatever they had to do.
Yeah, and many of them would go and have communion on a Sunday morning quickly before church, before they went to work. Yeah, exactly. So they found a way to do it without it being legalistic.
Yeah, it's one of the story says the master doesn't say to the slave when he comes home, "You can go rest." He says, "No, you got to make me dinner first.
Keep working."
Yeah, and then when you finish my dinner and I'm all sorted, then you can
look after yourself. Yep, yep, that's right. And so that's pretty much the Christian life. It's commitment to Jesus. Yeah. So Sabbath is good, rest is good by all means, but legalism will kill the mercy.
Oh, will, won't it?
Yeah, for sure. So let Jesus define your rhythm, I suppose. Let him define what that looks like for you.
And then suddenly you hurt your knee and you can't walk as fast.
Forces us to slow down, doesn't it?
That slows down the rhythm.
Yeah, it does. Slows down the rhythm, which is actually a good thing. Yeah. I think it is good to slow down. That's part of what the message of the Sabbath is about, whether you have an actual day or you take time off, but definitely the principle of slowing down and reliance on God. Part of the reason that they were to have a Sabbath and the festivals was that they were to take a day off from earning money to remind themselves that God was their source and he would provide for them better than they would be able to provide for themselves.
And they had a perfect example of that in the desert, didn't they?
Yes, that's right. That's where it began. Yeah. The manna. Yep, totally. All right. Anything else in your notes?
No, that should do for today.
All right. One to go.
One to go.
All right. We'll talk to everyone next time. See you then.